Thank you, and good afternoon. My name is Margaret Huang, and on behalf of the Campaign for an Accountable, Balanced, Moral, and Balanced Immigration Overhaul, also known as CAMBIO, I am pleased to welcome you all here to introduce this new campaign and to share some initial reactions to the just introduced Senate bill, the Border Security, Economic Opportunity, and Immigration Modernization Act. The CAMBIO campaign was launched this week by 11 national and regional coalitions and organizations united in our commitment to promoting due process and human rights protections within the immigration system. The last several years have witnessed multiple crises caused by the broken immigration system. Thousands of families have been torn apart, hundreds of thousands of people have been detained, many without due process. Border communities have suffered overwhelming militarization, and workers have been exploited and abused because of their immigration status. This week, Senators Schumer, McCain, Durbin, Graham, Menendez, Rubio, Bennett, and Flake introduced Senate Bill 744. This bill was a long overdue and much needed step forward in the effort to secure a pathway to citizenship for millions of people living in the shadows. The CAMBIO members are glad to see this process moving forward. But our collective commitment is to ensuring that any immigration reforms will restore protections of due process and judicial review, as well as effective mechanisms of accountability and oversight to ensure civil rights and civil liberties for all people living in the United States. This week, CAMBIO shared the results of a national poll that demonstrates yet again that the American public is far ahead of our politicians in supporting common sense immigration reforms. A significant majority of poll respondents support reforms that promote due process in the immigration system, that promote human rights at the border, and that strengthen workers' protections to help all workers in the United States. It's important that Congress listens to their constituents and works with groups like those of us in CAMBIO who are advocating real fixes for this broken system. It's worth noting the diversity of the members of this campaign. It is the first time that border organizations are working side by side with detention groups, standing shoulder to shoulder with workers' rights organizations, sharing the same platform with civil liberties advocates. The remarkable consensus of these groups to work together for immigration reforms that protect the human rights of all people in the U.S. is something that Congress must heed. Otherwise, this legislative effort will end, as many other attempts have, in failure. I'd like to recognize the representatives of the CAMBIO member groups who are with us this morning. From the ACLU, Laura Murphy. From the Border Network for Human Rights, Fernando Garcia. From Detention Watch Network, Andrea Black. From the Immigrant Justice Network, Paramita Shah and Angie Young. From the National Day Laborers Organizing Network, Sarahi Uribe. From the National Guest Workers Alliance, Saket Soni. From the National Immigration Law Center, Kamal Esaheb. And other CAMBIO members who could not be with us this morning or this afternoon, the Domestic Workers Alliance, the Northern Border Coalition, and the Southern Border Communities Coalition. I'd also like to recognize Crystal Platti, our campaign director, who's here with us. So what does CAMBIO think of the Senate bill that was introduced this week? Well, I'm going to start us off by highlighting Section 3305 under the Interior Enforcement title. There have been numerous complaints about racial profiling in recent years as the federal government has invested extraordinary resources in immigration and border enforcement measures. This enforcement-first approach has doubled the number of Border Patrol agents since 2005, has transferred immigration enforcement duties to local and state police across the country, and has increased the federal budget expenditures on immigration enforcement to unprecedented levels. The results have been complaints from Latino, African American, Asian American, Muslim American, Arab American, and South Asian American communities about racial, religious, and national origin profiling. The legislation proposes to further increase immigration enforcement expenditures, and therefore it has to include a prohibition on all forms of racial profiling to effectively respond to these concerns. We are very appreciative of the efforts of our champions, Senators Durbin and Menendez, who sought to address these concerns with Section 3305. For the first time, it would actually put into place a prohibition of racial profiling into U.S. federal law. Unfortunately, the language that they have adopted limits the definition of profiling to classifications of race and ethnicity, and it does not address profiling on the basis of national origin or religion. We hope to see this section amended by the Judiciary Committee in the process to come, and it needs to include all forms of racial profiling, and it needs to eliminate very problematic loopholes that are still in place that allow racial profiling in the cases of border security and national security.